Welcome to the deep dive. You sent over a really interesting batch of articles, and today we're digging into something, well, incredibly common, oregano.
That's right.
And we're aiming to go way beyond just, sprinkling it on pasta.
Definitely.
Our goal here is to sift through the science, see what potential health benefits this herb might actually offer you.
Exactly. Oregano. It's probably sitting in your kitchen right now, right?
Oh, absolutely, mine is.
It's just fundamental in so many dishes. You find it fresh, dried, as an oil. And what's quite cool is that even small amounts have useful compounds, some nutrients too.
Like what?
Well, take vitamin K, for instance. Just a teaspoon of the dried stuff gives you a decent chunk of your daily need.
Huh. Okay. Good to know. So let's get into the first really big point from the sources. Oregano's antioxidant power. It seems pretty impressive.
It really does. Multiple articles highlighted this. It's just packed with antioxidants.
And remind us, for everyone listening, antioxidants are basically the body's defense squad.
Right. Pretty much, yeah. They fight off damage from unstable molecules called free radicals.
Which are linked to some major health problems long term.
Exactly. Things like heart disease, cancer, chronic stuff. And what's striking with oregano is just how potent it seems. Lab studies consistently show high antioxidant levels both in the herb itself and particularly in the concentrated oil.
Okay. And are there specific compounds doing the heavy lifting there?
Yes, two names kept popping up, carvacrol and thymol. They seem especially good at, well, preventing that cell damage from free radicals.
So it's not just about eating your fruits and veggies, though obviously important. But adding oregano could be another easy way for you to boost that antioxidant intake.
Precisely. It all adds up.
And I saw one article mention something called an ORAC score. It was huge for oregano.
Ah, yes. The oxygen radical absorbing capacity. It measures antioxidant activity. Oregano's score was, let me check. Yeah, 159,277, which is, well, it's really up there.
Wow, okay. That really paints a picture of its potential punch.
It does. And think about physical stress, like intense exercise. There was this interesting study with soldiers.
Right, I saw that mentioned. What did they find?
Well, after heavy exercise, which causes oxidative stress, the soldiers who consumed oregano actually showed higher antioxidant levels and fewer markers of muscle damage.
Huh. So it might actually help your body handle and recover from that kind of stress.
The findings suggest it could play a role, yeah, combating that exercise-induced oxidative stress.
Okay, interesting. Now, shifting gears a little, another thing that came up a lot was oregano potentially fighting bacteria.
Antibacterial properties. Several test tube studies pointed to this.
Against what kinds of bacteria?
Well, they tested it against various strains, including some common culprits like E. coli and Pseudomonas aeruginosa, the ones that can cause infections.
Right. And it seemed pretty effective in those lab settings.
Apparently so. One study found it worked against, get this, 23 different bacterial species.
23. Wow.
Yeah. And another study compared oregano essential oil with sage and thyme oils. Oregano came out highly effective, just behind thyme.
So the essential oil seems particularly potent here.
It does. And again, it's those compounds, carvacrol and thymol, that seem key.
How do they work, roughly?
Well, one source mentioned carvacrol helps basically decrease the activity of the microorganisms, sort of slows them down or stops them.
Okay.
And there were more specific examples, too. A 2018 lab study showed carvacrol and thymol could stop Staphylococcus aureus, that's staph, from growing in meat and dairy.
Which is relevant for food safety, too, potentially.
Could be. And another study, same year, found oregano oil had, and I quote, significant antibacterial activity against 11 microbes that were resistant to drugs. In the lab, of course.
Drug-resistant microbes.
Oh.
That's obviously a huge concern.
It is. Now, this is lab work, very early days, but it does make you wonder if compounds from nature, like from oregano, could eventually offer some help with antibiotic resistance, but, lots more research needed there.
Absolutely. Still, fascinating potential. Now, this kind of connects to the next point, right? Potential anti-cancer properties.
It does seem connected, yeah. The thinking is, if it's rich in antioxidants fighting cell damage, maybe that helps prevent cancer initiation, too.
Makes sense. Free radicals are implicated in cancer development.
Exactly. But beyond that general antioxidant effect, some studies have looked directly at oregano and cancer cells in the lab.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, one test tube study found oregano extract actually stopped human colon cancer cells from growing. It even killed them off in the lab setting.
That sounds pretty significant, even for a lab study.
It's certainly noteworthy. And it wasn't just the whole extract. Another study zoomed in on carvacrol specifically.
Yeah.
It found carvacrol suppressed the growth and spread of colon cancer cells, again, in vitro in the lab dish.
Okay. Any other types of cancer studied?
Yeah, there was a 2017 test tube study suggesting oregano had tumor-suppressing effects in a breast cancer model.
Mm.
And looking broadly, a 2021 review summarized findings and concluded that both carvacrol and thymol showed anti-tumor and anti-proliferative activity in lab studies.
Okay, so consistent findings in the lab, it seems. But the big caveat here.
The big caveat absolutely is that this is almost all test tube and maybe some animal work, using concentrated amounts. We really can't jump to conclusions about humans yet.
Right. Need those human clinical trials.
Definitely. Crucial next step to see if it translates.
Okay. Moving on then. What about viruses? Any potential there?
Seems like there might be. Again, it's carvacrol and thymol getting the credit in some studies, this time for potential antiviral properties.
Okay.
Examples. One lab study found carvacrol could inactivate norovirus, the nasty stomach bug, within just 1 hour. In vitro again.
1 hour, that's fast.
Yeah. And another in vitro study showed thymol and carvacrol together inactivated 90% of the herpes simplex virus also within an hour.
Wow. Again, lab findings, but still. Pretty intriguing results against common viruses.
Absolutely. Opens doors for future research, doesn't it? See if it holds up in more complex systems and eventually people.
Definitely. Okay, what about inflammation? That's another huge area of health concern.
Right. And inflammation itself isn't bad. It's our body's natural response to injury or infection.
But chronic inflammation is the problem.
Exactly. Linked to so many diseases. And given oregano's antioxidants, it's logical to think it might help calm inflammation.
And does the research back that up?
It seems to point that way. There were animal studies, for instance. One showed carvacrol reduced paw swelling in mice.
Okay.
Another used a mix of thyme and oregano essential oils and found it reduced inflammatory markers in mice that had colitis, which is bowel inflammation.
So potential gut health benefits there too.
Possibly. And there was also a more recent 2020 study, this one in vitro, but using human skin cells, keratinocytes.
What did that find?
It suggested oregano essential oil might have anti-inflammatory effects and could even help with wound healing in those skin cells.
Interesting. So indications across different study types, animal, cell culture, that oregano might help manage inflammation.
Yeah, the signals seem consistent, suggesting it's worth looking into further.
Okay. Now, something a bit different that popped up was cholesterol. Some human research here.
Yes, actually. Some clinical research suggests that taking oregano, specifically after meals for about 3 months, might help lower LDL cholesterol.
The bad kind.
Right. And also potentially increase HDL, the good cholesterol.
Oh, okay. That's from human studies, you said.
Yeah, one source mentioned a specific study using an oregano distillate, sort of a concentrated liquid form. It showed improved cholesterol profiles in people with mild hyperlipidemia, basically slightly high cholesterol.
So direct human evidence there, which is good to see, suggests a potential dietary role.
It does. Needs more research to confirm dose and long-term effects, but it's promising.
And sticking with metabolic health,
Yeah.
diabetes, anything there?
Also some potential links being explored. The idea is that maybe daily oregano intake could have an anti-diabetic effect by potentially blocking certain enzymes involved in breaking down glucose or sugar.
Okay. Any evidence for that?
Well, a 2021 lab study found oregano extract could lower blood sugar through various mechanisms in vitro.
Mm-hmm.
And this fits with some older studies, mostly in rodents, suggesting oregano compounds might help manage diabetes symptoms, improve insulin sensitivity, and even regulate how fat and carbs are metabolized.
Rodent studies.
And there was one specific 2015 study where oregano extract seemed to improve type 1 diabetes in mice.
So mostly preclinical evidence, but pointing towards possible mechanisms for helping manage blood sugar or diabetes markers.
Exactly. Needs careful human studies, especially considering potential interactions with diabetes meds, but the initial science is intriguing.
It really is remarkable, the sheer range of potential benefits linked to this one herb. And the sources mentioned even more, didn't they? Some other highlights.
Yeah, quite a few, actually. Digestion came up. Oregano might help because it has antispasmodic properties, potentially relaxing the gut.
Okay.
And it might stimulate digestive secretions. Thymol, specifically, was mentioned for maybe relaxing throat and stomach tissue. Potential help for GERD, perhaps?
Interesting angle.
And remember the antibacterial stuff. One study suggested herbal antimicrobials, including oregano, were about as effective as an antibiotic called rifaximin for treating SIBO.
SIBO.
Yeah,
Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's a tricky one to treat.
it is. So that was quite a notable finding, though just one study.
Okay, what else?
Respiratory issues, like coughs and colds. Taking oregano as tea or syrup might act as an expectorant, helping clear secretions. Bronchitis, maybe? Even inhaling the steam was mentioned.
Like a traditional home remedy?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, potentially relieving muscular pain, likely tied back to those antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects we talked about. Maybe even used topically, diluted essential oil or infused dressings.
Right.
And then there's preventing early aging signs. Again, antioxidants like flavonoids, vitamin C.
Makes sense.
Supporting weight loss, possibly through those inflammation antioxidant links again. And fighting various infections beyond just bacteria, flu, UTIs, herpes, yeast infections, likely due to carvacrol and other
Oh,
compounds.
that is a herb.
It really seems to be. And finally, some rodent studies even hinted at benefits for stress, like improving stress-related behaviors, maybe helping with anxiety or memory issues linked to chronic stress.
Wow. Okay, so it's easy to see why it's been used in traditional medicine for so long.
Absolutely. And nutritionally, beyond these active compounds, it does offer something too, right? Even small amounts.
Yeah, you mentioned vitamin K earlier. Anything else significant?
Well, it provides manganese and iron too, and it's very low in calories. That 1 tablespoon example of ground oregano
Right.
gives you a good bit of vitamin K plus some of those minerals. So, yeah, it definitely adds more than just flavor.
So for people listening who are thinking, okay, maybe I should use more oregano, how can they actually do that easily?
Oh, it's super versatile, fresh or dried. Just toss it into salads, chili, soups, stews, pretty much any savory dish.
Right.
It's great in pesto, homemade dressings, rubs for meat or fish, pasta sauces. Endless possibilities, really.
And you mentioned tea or syrup.
Yeah, those are options too. And for the essential oil, again, just emphasizing safety, proper dilution is key if using topically or inhaling. Never ingest it undiluted.
Okay, which leads us perfectly into the crucial part, the considerations and potential risks. Because all this potential is exciting, but people need to be careful.
Absolutely critical. First off, remember, most of this research uses concentrated extracts or oils, often not in humans. The amounts you sprinkle on food are much lower.
So we can't assume we'll get the same effects from just cooking with it.
Exactly. We need more human studies using typical dietary amounts. Also, really high doses might cause stomach upset for some people.
Okay. And any groups who need to be particularly cautious.
Yes. Medicinal amounts aren't generally recommended during pregnancy or breastfeeding. Allergies are possible too, especially if you're allergic to other herbs in the same family, like mint, basil, sage, the Lamiaceae family.
Good point. What about medications?
Big one here, blood thinners. Oregano has vitamin K and might slow blood clotting, so definitely talk to your doctor if you're on medications like warfarin.
Okay, very important.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
People with diabetes. Since oregano might lower blood sugar, you need to be cautious, monitor your levels, and discuss it with your doctor, especially if you're on diabetes medication.
Right, avoid potential lows.
Exactly. And it's generally advised to stop taking large amounts of oregano before surgery because of that potential increased bleeding risk.
Makes sense.
Also, just a note that it might affect how your body absorbs certain minerals, copper, iron, zinc. Probably not an issue with normal amounts, but good to be aware of with high doses or supplements.
And that distinction between oregano oil, for cooking sometimes, and oregano essential oil.
Crucial difference. Essential oil is highly concentrated, potent stuff. Never swallow it undiluted. It's meant for aromatherapy or very careful diluted topical use, usually under guidance.
Okay, good safety rundown. So let's try and wrap this up. The big picture seems to be that oregano is, well, way more than just a pizza herb.
Definitely. It's packed with compounds that show real promise, especially as an antioxidant and maybe an antimicrobial.
But, and it's a big but.
We really need more solid human research to confirm a lot of these exciting lab and animal findings, right? For cancer, viruses, inflammation, cholesterol, diabetes, all those areas.
Right. The potential is there. The proof in humans isn't quite solid across the board yet.
Exactly. So for now, enjoying oregano in your cooking seems like a great idea. Adds flavor, adds some nutrients, maybe some extra protective compounds.
Just be mindful of the potential risks and interactions, especially if you have health conditions or take medications. Talk to your doctor if you're unsure.
Always the best advice.
So, final thought to leave people with. Given oregano's history and this emerging science,
Yeah.
it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other common herbs are just sitting there in our spice racks, maybe holding surprising health secrets we haven't fully explored yet?
That's a great question. Makes you look at your kitchen staples a bit differently, doesn't it?